Now we're on Samachei Omid Beis, and the Mishnah says Shisa v'lo hivdil. Right? If he does not do Avdullah, the carbon is possible. But with regard to the body of the whatchamacallit of the bird, he has to do Shisa with his hands, and he doesn't separate the two parts of the body. Tan Rabbanan v'Shisa ein Shisa el biyad v'chedu Omer. Now we're going to get a pasuk from Shimshon Agibar, and it says about him Shaseu kishasa gdi. With his bare hands, he was so powerful that he could rip apart a lion like he would rip apart a kid, a young goat. So anyway, you see the word vashisa means biyat, with a hand without any sakin or anything else. Lo hisa samura, then it passes the carbon if in the olas ha'ofi did not remove the crop. Masnisin to lo Rabbi ben Shimon. And now we're talking about a Kohen who went ahead in a Chatas Ha'of, and he did Avdallah, which he wasn't supposed to do. He separated the body from the head in Malika, Mamish severed it. And our Mishnah says it's possible. And Rabbi Elazar ben Reb Shimon is a dissenting of view. Disan Yomer Rabbi Elazar ben Reb Shimon, Shamati Shemavdilim b'chatas ha'of. Now again, I don't know what he means by mavdilim. If lechatchila you should have done so, I don't know. But he's saying that if you went ahead and you did so, it doesn't passel the carbon. Now he says in the name of Rashi that at this point in the sugya, the Gemara thinks that according to Rabbi Elazar, if he would ask us whether to do Avdol or not in the case of a Chatasof, we would certainly tell him not to do it. But if with the Eved he went and he did and he violated V'lo Yavdil, nevertheless the carbon is kosher. Is my Beinayu, Omer Av Chizda, Mitzui Chatos Ha'of Ma'akev Ika Beinayu. Tanakam is sover Mitzui Chatos Ha'of Ma'akev. If he doesn't do the Mitzui in the case of Chatasov, that's the second avoda that we have in a Chatasov. Then without that, it's possible. Keva the Mitzui Dama Akev, right? Because it's absolutely essential that he does the squeezing of the dam. Is Ka'avid Maisa Ola Bechatasov. What's going on over here? I'm sorry, this part I didn't figure out. So we'll see. I mean, we have a few more minutes. Let's try to see what we can do. Kosh Baruch Hu should help us. A bird chatas that was offered according to the procedure of a bird ola is possible, even though he had lishma l'shem chatas. The procedure of the ola invalidates the chatas. Now, the two essential elements in the ola are malika and malika with havdol, of course, and mitzvah adam. So therefore, the Tanakhama says if he does havdolah in the case of a chatos, when he does the malika, then it's possible. He says, for in order to proceed with the offering of the chatos, he would have to squeeze out the dam onto the mizbeach, and that would invalidate the carbon because he would have done both essential elements of the ola to the chatos, malika, in which he severs both the esophagus and the windpipe, the two simanim, and the mitzvah dam. So again, what's exactly the case? He did mitzui of a chatos. For Rabbi Lazar of Shimon Sover, mitzui chatos ha'oflo ma'akev. So if we go back to now, to go back to the case of chatos. So he's saying that the squeezing of the dam of a chatos is not essential. Therefore, if he went ahead and he separated the head from its body, he won't do the mitzvah dam. So again, according to the Tanakama, in the case of chatos ha'of, mitzvah dam is absolutely critical, and therefore, if he went ahead and he separated the head of the chatos from its body, and he did avdol in the case of a chatos, he won't be able to do the mitzvah dam, and mitzvah dam is essential. But according to Rabbi Lazar, since mitzvah dam is not essential, even if he went and he did avdola, and that makes it impossible for him to do the mitzvah dam, the carbon is kosher. So if he does avdola and he cuts the second simon, the second pipe, we'll call it, then okay, he's not repeating the avoda of the ola, but rather he's cutting flesh. Rava now apparently understands the machlokas Shinatana and Rav Loza in a different way. Shehia b'simon sheni bi'olas ha'of ika beinayim. Right, there's a psul in shchita of shehia. If you wait too long between one simon and the other simon, what about shehia in the case of an olas ha'of, which is malika? So one of the five psuli shchita shehia. That means he has to do one continuous cutting in which he cuts both simanim, and if he takes a pause in the middle, the shchita is pasul. In case of alika, which is a replacement for shchita, and you have to do the malika on both simanim in the case of an ola, and he pauses between the cutting of the first pipe and the cutting of the second pipe, and that's going to be a machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Loza. Tanakama sovar shehia b'simin sheni b'osov psolim. Right? It's exactly equal to shchita. It's malika is a substitute for shchita, and therefore shehia is a puzzle. V'afal gav de shehia ka'ovid maisa ola b'chatos. So now we talk about malika and chatas ha'of, and right, we said the malika and chatas ha'of has to be different than the malika and olas ha'of. Now you can't repeat the same performance. And now it seems like it's necessary to do the shehiyah, to wait until he does the second siman, so that it won't be a repetition or a duplication of what he would do in an ola self. Ka'avid maisa ola b'chatas. Right? In the ola, there's going to be a psul of shehiyah. And now in chatas, he has to do the exact opposite of shehiyah. But nevertheless, the Tanakama holds that even in the case of chatas, since malika replaces shchita, therefore there's a psul of shehiyah. So that's what he says, afal gav to shehiyah ovid maisa olasao. So again, in the case of chatos, what's the malika? He pierces the back of the bird's neck, cutting through the neck bone and the spinal cord without cutting, right? This is velo yavdil. Then he cuts through one pipe, proceeds to cut more flesh around the neck so that the greater part is cut through. When the Kohen separates the head of a bird chatos, his cutting through of the greater part of the flesh will necessarily intervene between the cutting of the first pipe and cutting the second. So in chatas off there's got to be a shehir. So in olas ha'of, if he does a shehir, passes the olah. But in chatas, he's got to do the shehir. By cutting the second pipe of the chatas ha'of, the Kohen is following the entire procedure of the olas ha'of, except that he is interposing the cutting of the greater part of the flesh between the cutting of the first pipe and the second. Now, since the Tanna Kama holds that a pause between cutting the first and second pipes of the bird olah does not disqualify the olah. Does not disqualify the olah. I'm sorry, I read it wrong. Lo pasla. Tanna Kama holds that there's a difference between shchita and malika. In the case of shchita, the second pipe is needed in order to kill the animal, since an animal is deemed legally dead only through the cutting of both pipes, not through one pipe. The cutting of the second pipe is part of the shchita, and therefore, if it's part of the ma'aseh shchita, if he pauses before cutting the second pipe, between the first and second pipe, that's going to passel the shchita. It's one ma'aseh. But in malika, the cutting of the second pipe is not needed in order to kill the bird, since a bird is deemed legally dead with the cutting of the first pipe, as evidence from the fact that the shchita of an unconsecrated bird requires the cutting of only one pipe. Something we didn't know. So shchitas ophos only requires the shchita of one of the two simonim. The cutting of the second pipe during the malika, in the case of an olas ha'of, is needed only in order to fulfill the additional requirement of separation of havdalah. Accordingly, the cutting of the second pipe is not technically a continuation of the malika, and therefore a pause between cutting of the second pipe before cutting the second pipe does not constitute an invalidating pause, since the malika itself, completed with the cutting of the first pipe, was done without interruption. Now, in the case of chatos ha'of, if he cuts the second pipe, he's following the entire procedure of the bird olah. So therefore, if the Kohen separates the head of the bird chatas from the goof, he has done to the chatas a procedure acceptable for an olah, which disqualifies the chatas. So if I understand correctly, he's saying that dafka in the case of chatas, there should be no shehir, because if he would do a shehir, then he would be imitating the avoda of the olas ha'of. Let me read it one more time to make sure. Tanna Kama holds that a pause, a shehir between the first and second pipes in the case of an olah, does not disqualify the olah. And therefore, in the case of a chatos, if the Kohen separates the head of the bird, meaning without a shehiyah, then he's done to the chatos that which is acceptable for an olah, which we said that shehiyah does not disqualify the olah, and therefore this would disqualify the chatos. I think we got it right. And I know we ran out of time, so we'll just read the next line. For Rabbi Eliezer Reb Shimon Savar, Pasla. Oh, that's what I read in the Tanakhama mistakenly. So therefore, according to Rabbi Elazar, in the case of an Olah, Shehiyah passes. And came into Shehiyah, came into Shayhe. I guess in the case of a Chatos, if he does a Shehiyah and delays the cutting of the second pipe when he does his Malika, is Mechatek Basa Bi'almahu. Because Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon holds that there's a psul of Shehiyah in Olas Ha'of, just like there is in Shechita. So again, in Olas Ha'of, he's got to shech the second simon for the mitzvah of Havdalah. But nevertheless, it's part of the Malika. And if it's part of the Malika, then we don't tolerate any Shehiyah between the first pipe and the second pipe. Hence, if there was a Shehiyah in the Chatas Ha'of, then it would be kosher. Just 1 second. Just get it. If I just get this point, then we can end the shir here. Just 1 second. I forgot. Tanakama holds that what? Low puzzle. I forgot the shir here. Why? Because since in the case of Olas Ha'of, if he did a shehiyah, then the carbon would be kosher. So therefore, in chatos, if he does a shehiyah, is ovid maisa ola bechatos, and therefore the chatos is possible. Comes Rabbi Elazar, and he says no. That in the case of an ola, there's no shehiyah, meaning the havdalah requires that you cut both pipes as one maisa malika, like in shechita, and therefore, in the case of ola of chatas ha'of, if he does a shehiyah, then the carbon is kosher because he's doing something which would passel the ola ha'of. So he's not imitating the procedure, but on the contrary, he's doing the opposite and therefore be kosher. So Lamaisa, the nafkamina here between the Tanakama and Rabbi Elazar is if he did a shehiyah in chatas ha'of between the first pipe and the second pipe, according to the Chachamim, that would be possible. According to Chachamim, that would be kosher. Let me get that right. No, because again, the Chacham hold that Shehiyah in Olas Ha'of does not passel the carbon, and therefore Shehiyah in Chatas Ha'of would passel the carbon, because it's Ka'avid Maisa Ola B'Chatas. Since in Ola it's okay to do Shehiyah, therefore in Chatas, if he does Shehiyah, it's possible. Whereas Rabbi Elazar hold that no, this Olas Ha'of doesn't tolerate Shehiyah. It's got to be Havdalah, in which he's one Maisa Malika, he cuts both Simanim, and therefore, if he takes a pause between one Siman and a Chatas Ha'of, it's going to be kosher. And that's according to Rav. Tomorrow, in Mirza Hashem, we'll talk about Abaye and his understanding of this machlokes, and that's